Hello everyone, my name is Siddharth and today I will be presenting some of our recent results on a sustainable and scalable technology to produce high performance mesoporous silicon for lithium ion batteries. First of all, apologies that I could not be there in person due to many travel restrictions and local rules that we have from UK and also reaching US. But equally, thank you for the organizers for letting me present this virtually. So today I'm going to talk about our work that we have been doing at University of Sheffield in the chemical and biological engineering department. So before going into the outline of the talk, I would like to show you where we are based. So we are in Sheffield, which is almost in the middle of England, as shown on the map here. It's a really beautiful city and quite a green city, almost to an extent that it's called a natural amphitheater, which is created by 7 hills and 5 rivers with large spans of green spaces, and a third of the city is within the Peak District National Park. And you can't really avoid coming into work in any parks or woodlands or green areas. It's just distributed across the city, which is really, really nice. And looking at scientifically, we have one of the highest trees to people ratio in any European city. Now, the university is quite an old university and an established university, which has 54 departments, so quite a full-fledged university working across the disciplines, and with a student population of about 30,000 in the university. So coming to the talk, I'll present very briefly some challenges and opportunities in energy storage, look at porous silicon as the solution to address those challenges, and mainly focus on how we can make high quality porous silicon in an economical way, predictable and reliable way, in a sustainable fashion, as well as in a scalable fashion. And then towards the end, I will provide conclusions. So if we briefly look at challenges and opportunities in energy storage, there are 8 that are shown here, but the key one is having high volumetric and gravimetric energy densities. Now that can be addressed through novel electrode chemistries and enhancing their performances through optimization. It also requires a holistic understanding, so performing techno-economic and sustainability assessment, everything from feedstock all the way to manufacturing and end use. And one of the key things required is the knowledge of processing structure, property, performance relationship that we can then use predictably to produce mesoporous or porous silicon. So if you look at this question whether silicon can be the answer for providing high density energy electrodes, and the graph on the right hand side shows you that silicon has really high capacity at moderate or low potentials. And it's quite comparable to what is currently used, which is carbon electrodes. But when you look at the capacity over cycle, for example, carbon is about here, 371 milliamp hour per gram. But silicon, in theory, can produce 10 times more that performance. The problem with silicon is that as the cycling takes place in use through lithiation and delithiation, silicon starts reducing its performance. And that's because through lithiation, there's volume expansion that takes place that leads to physical cracking of the electrode, and then it then shatters. So through some simulations, what researchers have shown is that high surface area silicon is really possible to use as a high performance electrode. It provides better accessibility for the electrolyte, and it also offers shorter lithium diffusion lengths. And any expansion that happens due to lithiation can occur in the pore sizes or pores of the materials, which can lead to minimum physical cracking. This has been shown schematically on the right-hand side. So the top panel shows you bulk silicon which through lithiation and delithiation can crack and leaves a really poor performing electrode. But when we have porous or mesoporous silicon, you can see that the expansion can occur in its own void spaces, and cracking can be minimized. Now, the challenges in manufacturing silicon are such that while silicon can be produced currently, most methods are surface-based methods and require extreme conditions and chemicals such as HF. So it's not sustainable or economical when it comes to bulk manufacturing that is desired for electrode applications. So magnesiothermic reduction is an excellent alternative, but at the moment it is not commercial. And the reaction is shown here. So you start with a silica precursor, which is a much cheaper feedstock, mix it with magnesium, which gives you magnesium oxide and silicon, and dissolution of magnesium oxide in acid can lead to porous silicon that can be collected and used. Now, the key challenge with this, and the reason it's not commercialized, is that it's not known how to use magnesiothermic reduction as a predictable, scalable, and sustainable method to produce high quality silicon. And that's what we are going to address here in this talk and show some of our results in that context. So the first one is, how can we make this predictably or in a quality by design approach? And what we are looking at is trying to connect the feedstock, process, product, and performance within this scenario. So for example, how silica sources, their scalability, the properties of the feedstock can be used in processes which can be used to tune temperatures, the time, the stoichiometry, the ramp rates, and any thermal moderators used to produce products with high yield, high purity, with desired pore structure and crystallinity such that they provide us the performance that is required for commercial batteries. And at the moment, this knowledge or this connectedness doesn't exist, and that is one of the first things we try to look at. So before I move on and show the results, it's really important to look at what kinds of feedstock exist and what are useful. So mesoporous silica has been used, but manufacturing of mesoporous silica is unsustainable and uneconomical to such an extent that tons per annum scales have not been reached. Now, other sources which are available in large quantities, such as sand, rice husk, or fly ash, can be used, but they have their own problems, such as high variability in their properties and contaminants, such as other metals and components which can adversely affect the performance of silicon. So recently what we've done is taken inspiration from biology, which produces large quantities of silicon, which are high performance and under eco-friendly conditions. So that has led us to the invention of greener routes to make synthetic silica at the same time, which are high value silica, such that they are sustainable, scalable, and economical. And we've shown or reported all these aspects in some of our recent publications. So we're using this bio-inspired silica to produce silicon. And when we undertake this reaction, typically what we see is mesoporous silicon being made. So this is gas adsorption isotherm showing you adsorption and desorption curves. From that, we can obtain pore size distribution, and we can see that the pore sizes are centered around 10 or 11 nanometers. So it is essentially a mesoporous silicon. And when we look at products after washing away with HCl, we have only silicon left. Before etching, obviously, we have magnesium oxide and magnesium silicide being made as well. Now, we mapped a number of process parameters, and I'm only showing you here reaction temperature. And for more details, you can see a recently published paper. Now, in this busy graph, what I'm showing you on x-axis is the temperature used for making silicon and how that affects the specific surface area shown in black, the pore sizes shown in red, and pore volumes shown in blue. And you can see that while pore sizes increase, the surface area decreases significantly with the temperature. With pore volume, it steadies up to a certain point and then it dramatically reduces. If we look at simultaneously the effect of temperature on the purity of the product and the crystal size of silicon being made, what we see is that while the purity increases, the crystal sizes also increase. And that leads to sintering, which causes lower surface area and lowering the void spaces in the final material. So we see that for porosity purposes, moderate temperatures are required, but for purity purposes, we need high temperatures. So there needs to be a balance attained on temperature that is used for getting highly pure and highly porous silicon. Now we've mapped many other parameters, stoichiometry, reaction times, and other interplays between these parameters to come up with a mechanistic picture as shown here. So we start with our silicas, which have dimensions shown here, and through ultra small angle X-ray scattering, we were able to understand the primary and secondary particle sizes. And then we see that as the reaction progresses, this white silica converts into brown silicon with some magnesium products, and they could be magnesium silicide or magnesium oxide or combination of both. And upon acid washing, we can produce only mesoporous silicon. So as we map the temperature, what we see is that at high temperature, what happens is the sintering occurring, which leads to large crystal sizes, and that leaves us low porosity and sometimes low purity as well. So when we also have high magnesium in use, we can get a lot of magnesium silicide as a product, which then gets washed away, which leaves us low purity and large or broad pore sizes. So with this map, we can now use this understanding to design or do quality by design approach. So hopefully what I've given you a flavor of is that we can make this economically. And of course, I've not shown you any techno-economic analysis, but that is actually that has been performed in an underpinning study. And we've also shown you that this can be done predictably. Now let's look at can we do this in a scalable fashion? So of course, I don't have to convince this audience that direct scale up can cause problems. But in this particular case, what we show that the porosity is completely lost when we increase even from 1 gram batches to 2 or 3 gram batches. Also, you can see that the pore volume significantly reduces. So this adversely affects the properties of the final product, which is the porous silicon. And the reason for this is that there's excess localized heating. The magnesiothermic reduction reaction has high exotherm, which means that we have hot spots which lead to a literal meltdown of the products. And that leads to silicon crystal sintering, as we can see here, with the crystal sizes significantly increasing as the batch sizes go up. So how do we address this problem? And there's a simple solution. We can use thermal moderators such as sodium chloride, which absorb the excessive heat being generated, and that leads to lowering the number of hotspots or maintaining the temperature across the reaction system. That leads to maintaining the porous properties of the materials even when it is scaled up. And you can see here in blue bars that the pore volumes are maintained and small crystal sizes are also maintained when we have a thermal moderator added. We've also looked at the interplay between the amount of thermal moderator used and the temperature of the reaction in order to optimize the scale up, and those results are published in a recent paper as shown at the bottom of this slide. So with those results, we're then looking at, can we make this system more sustainable and also more economical by reducing the temperature and using wider feedstock, which are even cheaper. So we applied our underpinning knowledge of the processing structure, property, performance relationships to all kinds of silicas. Some are low value silicas available in large quantities, or silica gels, or even quartz, which does not have inherent porosity. And what we have shown here is that the final products, which are shown in blue and red, are mesoporous. And even in cases where quartz that does not have any porosity, we can induce mesoporosity by simply playing with the reaction conditions that we have now understood. So what this shows is that we can use economical and sustainable feedstock that is available for making high quality mesoporous silicon. The second aspect of sustainability is, can we reduce the temperature? And the answer is yes. And what we have done recently and published in a paper which was published really last week is that by exploiting nanoscale effects, we can enable even low temperature of magnesiothermic reduction. And one example shown here is, if we look at silica feedstock of different particle sizes, we see that at small particle sizes of 20 nanometers, we can initiate the reaction at temperatures lower than that have been reported previously. So we are able to take it from something that required 650 and higher temperatures way below, and the graph on the left hand side shows to about 400 degrees Celsius for 20 nanometer sample. But when we took this even further for 7 nanometer particles, we were able to show that this reaction can occur at high purity at 380 degrees Celsius. So the onset temperature now, the bracket of that has gone significantly down, which has benefits in terms of sustainability through saving the energy required for high temperatures for this reaction. And when we looked at the products at low temperature, we can show firstly from XRD that at 450 degrees Celsius, using 20 nanometer silica, we can make pure silicon. And this high resolution TEM shows you with the arrowheads that we have made crystalline materials and the lattice fringes match with crystalline silicon. So this is the first evidence to show the formation of silicon using magnesiothermic reduction at temperatures as low as 400 or 380 degrees Celsius. So what we have essentially shown is that by reducing the particle size of silica feedstock, we can now produce pure silicon at very low temperatures. Very briefly going through the anode performance for these different kinds of materials or different kinds of feedstock. What we show here is that silicon produced from bio-inspired silica has a really high performance in terms of capacity and low capacity fade. And that is probably due to the hierarchical structures which offer shorter lithium diffusion and therefore higher capacity. With that, hopefully I have convinced you that a lot of opportunities in batteries can be achieved or fulfilled through use of porous silicon. Until now, the manufacturing method for bulk silicon did not exist, but using magnesiothermic reduction and fundamental understanding, we have enabled a manufacturing route for mesoporous silicon that is economical, predictable, reliable, sustainable, and scalable. With that, I would like to thank my group, and in particular, Jake and Max, who have done all this work. And thank you all for your time, and thank you for the opportunity to present virtually. And I'm happy to take any questions afterwards. Thank you very much.